In the 2023 playoffs alone, we've had the two highest scoring Game 7s of all time. Steph with 50, and then Tatum topping that with 51. But is scoring everything when it comes to a Game 7? Since 2000, we have witnessed 71 series decided in 7 games. 81 times a player in those games has scored 27 points or more. But in a modern NBA where we've seen teams score anywhere from 61 to 127 points, I think it's important to look at the whole picture. So all this got me thinking, where do Tatum and Curry's Game 7 performances rank? What are the top 20 Game 7 performances since 2000? We'll take a look beyond the stats and into the context on this episode of Stat Stories. Now, if you automatically put Tatum at the top because of his scoring, then you're not going to like the rest of this video. But if you have a memory that goes back at least 23 years, you'll know he's got some tough competition. 182 players have scored 21 or more in a Game 7 since 2000. While I know scoring isn't everything, I know that this encompassed all of the best performances that I really wanted to look at. From here, I had to make some difficult decisions to get down to a number that I could actually work with. Starting with first round losses. If you lost in the first round, I can't have you in this top 20. There are just too many winning performances in Game 7 that are better. If you lost in any of the other rounds, I'm also eliminating games where players lost by more than 10. And finally, if you scored less than 35% of your team's points in that loss, I'm also eliminating you. As far as games where players won Game 7, this is definitely tougher. I started by ranking all 182 games by points, their stat line, and percent of team points. Then I eliminated games from each round according to those ranks. In the first round and the semifinals, they needed to be in the top 30. Conference finals get a little more leeway here, they needed to be in the top 50. And with so few finals performances, we're keeping them all in. So through that process, we go from 182 games all the way down to 47, which is way more manageable for me to look at the context, the stats, the stories behind it, so that I can get a clear picture of what the top 20 games actually are. Before I get into that, there are two honorable mentions I have to discuss. The first one is Luka in 2021 against the Clippers. He went off for 46, 7, and 14 in what was a 7-point game with 2 minutes left, basically carrying a team at 22 years old with the 4th highest scoring game since 2000. In fact, he set the Game 7 record in this game, only for it to be broken less than 2 weeks later. Even though he did score some in garbage time, it was still an impressive performance, just not enough to crack our top 20. Hopefully we get another Luka Game 7 in the future. Our other honorable mention is an absurd Tim Duncan performance in 2006 versus the Mavs. In an overtime loss at home, Duncan put up 41, 15, and 6 with 3 blocks. That stat line would be our 3rd highest stat line of the 182 games we looked at. Unfortunately for Duncan, Dirk Nowitzki had his own insane performance and sent the defending champion packing. Otherwise, this would be much higher on our list. So, how did I choose the top 20? For each of these games, we looked at the stats and context surrounding the performance. We looked at things like points, totals. Was it an overtime game? What round was it in? Did you go on to become the champs that year? Finals MVP? Who were you playing? Did you have any clutch moments within that clutch performance? It wasn't easy, but I managed to narrow it down to 20. Kicking us off at number 20, Kevin Garnett's 2004 Game 7 versus the Kings. His insane 30-20 game is one of 9 in Game 7 history, and the only one since 1993. Garnett was clutch on both sides of the ball in this game as well. In the 4th quarter, he hits this 3 at the end of the shot clock, and with 16 seconds left in the game, he helps lock down Mike Bibby to force a tough Kings 3 for the tie. Not only that, he comes in here at the last second to get a block to make sure that there's no miracles for the Kings here at the end. This secured the Wolves' only trip to the Western Conference Finals in their entire history, and in his MVP season, his totals are the 5th highest out of the 182 games that we looked at. Only 2 first-round games made this list, and LeBron's 45-point explosion where he scored 42.9% of his team's points to carry them over the Pacers had to make this list. His 45 points have him tied for 5th most in a Game 7 since 2000. He also had to compete with Victor Oladipo going off for 30, 12, and 6. In the 4th quarter, LeBron did what he had to make sure that his team was going to win and advance. So not only did he have this absurd stat line, but he made sure that his team won, and that's why it's only one of 2 first-round appearances in our top 20. While the Cavs would go on to lose in the NBA Finals, had he lost this game, we would have missed out on Cavs-Warriors Round 4. Our other first-round game comes in at 18 with Steph Curry's 2023 record-breaking performance versus the Kings. This was the first 50-point Game 7 in playoff history. And this was just a vintage Steph performance. When he's hitting layups like that, when he's hitting threes like this, it's impossible to think he's going to miss anything. Steph did a little bit of everything with his 50, 8, and 6. That was enough for him to be 4th in our rankings of total stats. However, Steph got his 50 points at the end of a 20-point blowout, which diminishes his performance just a little bit. Like, you could tell he knew he was going to get 50, but he didn't need to do it for the Warriors to win the game. While he carried his team with 41.7% of his team's points, a loss in the semis kept this from being even more important. And here's where we get to Tatum. 2 weeks after Steph's record-breaking performance, Tatum's breaking his record and eliminating the MVP in Boston. His 51, 13, and 5 stat line is enough to give him the number 1 ranking in our stat line rankings. Last time anyone had a stat line like that was when Barkley had 44 points and 24 rebounds in 1993. Tatum scored a crazy 45.5% of his team's points in this game, only behind an even more absurd LeBron James performance. When you look at his 51 points all time, it's tied for 23rd most in a playoff game. Similarly to Steph's performance, Tatum's going to get slightly knocked here because the historical importance won't be there if they lose to the Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals. Just like Tatum, Kevin Durant stole the record for most points scored in a Game 7 about 2 weeks after Luka dropped 46 in 2021. While it came in an overtime loss, his game ranks 3rd in points and 4th in stat line since 2000. Watching Durant get buckets live in this game was insane. Ultimately, it was Giannis' Game 7 performance that would make the difference here. But if Durant didn't have to wear a size 18 shoe, we might be talking about a whole different NBA landscape. And here's where the what if factor of my rankings comes into play heavily. What if the Nets go on to beat the Hawks? They make it to the finals and they play the Suns. If they win that, KD wins a ring without Steph, Kyrie wins a ring without LeBron, and Harden finally gets a ring. And if all that happens, does Brooklyn blow up their team over the next few years, or do we see the start of another dynasty? We'll never know, and that's why this one sits at number 16 on our rankings. In 2006, we saw one of the most impressive playoff runs by a single player when Dirk Nowitzki torched the Western Conference. One of his best performances came in Game 7 versus Tim Duncan and the Spurs. To give you some context, the Mavs are playing the defending champs, on the road in Game 7. Dirk was hitting insane shots like his patented fadeaway that we all know and love. I can't stress enough how much of a battle this was between these two. Just look at Dirk's frustration. The Spurs cap off a 20-point comeback when Ginobili hits a 3 here with just over 30 seconds left to give them a 3-point lead. And what does Dirk do? Comes right back down and gets an and one. I thought for sure this game was over when Ginobili hit that 3, but then Dirk gives us hope. The very next possession, we get one of the best defensive moments of Dirk's career. He blocks Duncan at the buzzer, and we're headed to overtime. The Mavs pull away, Dirk beats Tim Duncan, and carries his team to the first finals appearance in franchise history. At 14, we have Paul Pierce taking down LeBron James in one of the best Game 7s of all time. Pierce and the Celtics overcame LeBron's 45 points to go on to their first Eastern Conference Finals since 2002. From the start, it was a battle between Pierce and LeBron. In the second half, LeBron would hit a 3, and the very next possession, Pierce would come down and hit a jumper. LeBron would go on to score 48.9% of his team's points, while Pierce scored 42% of his team's. Pierce wasn't always bothered by LeBron's defense, but with a couple minutes left, he gave up a costly turnover that turned into a LeBron James fast break dunk. But in the most crucial moment of the game, it's Paul Pierce that dives on the floor in front of LeBron James to get the loose ball and call a timeout to get Boston possession. Pierce would go on to hit some clutch free throws, and the Celtics would go on to win their only championship since 1986, with Paul Pierce being the finals MVP. Going back to the 2021 battle between the Bucks and the Nets, we've got Giannis at 13. Not only does he overcome Durant's insane stat line, he puts up his own. His 40, 13, and 5 are good for 9th best in our stat line ranking. The Bucks would go on to win their first finals since 1971 and Giannis would be the finals MVP. With a few clutch buckets in the fourth quarter and overtime, Giannis sealed the victory, but they were still so close to being eliminated by this Nets team. At 12, we have the biggest what-if game in our rankings. The 2016 Western Conference Finals, where we saw Steph and KD go at it. Steph had 36 points, including 7 threes in this game. It didn't matter who was on Steph this game, he was hitting everything. The irony here is insane, because after the Thunder blow a 3-1 lead to the Warriors go on in the finals that year to blow a 3-1 lead to LeBron. If Curry doesn't have this kind of performance, the Warriors don't blow a 3-1 lead to LeBron. Maybe KD and the Thunder go on to win a championship and they stick together. Maybe we see the end of the Warriors dynasty right here in 2016. This performance shaped the future of the NBA. Who knows, we might be having a conversation right now about Kevin Durant being the greatest of all time. At number 11, we have the 2002 Shaq and Kobe duo in the Western Conference Final versus the Blazers. Before you get mad at me, I could not leave out one of the best Game 7 performances in NBA history. Being on the verge of blowing a 3-0 lead, the Lakers scored 31 points in the fourth quarter to the Blazers' 13. With clutch play after clutch play, their performance culminated in one of the most iconic plays in NBA history.
Bryant to Shaq!
The Lakers avoid blowing the 3-0 lead, go on to the finals, and begin their own three-peat. There were 3 clutch performances in the 2016 finals, and Draymond Green and Kyrie Irving were spectacular. With a near triple-double for Draymond, including 6 threes, he almost did enough to keep his team from blowing a 3-1 lead. But Kyrie seized the opportunity over and over again with so many clutch buckets, acrobatic shots like this, and following up his own rebound with a tip-in. In a game with LeBron James and Steph Curry, it was Irving who would go on to hit the game winner.
Irving and Curry, one-on-one. Irving puts it up. It's good! Kyrie Irving from downtown!
In 2019, we got to witness an absurd Kawhi Leonard stat line with 41, 8, and 3, where he scored 44.6 of his team's points and hit an insane game winner. Kawhi was clutch in the fourth quarter, hitting all kinds of shots, and I think we all thought this was going to overtime after this Jimmy Butler layup. But then Kawhi goes on to hit one of the wildest game winners you'll ever see. Kawhi would go on to lead the Raptors to their only championship in team history. Look, even the TNT graphics guy thought this game was going to overtime. In 2018, we had another amazing duo in a Western Conference Final matchup. Steph and KD would go on to beat the NBA's MVP on his home court in a Game 7. While Durant had 34, 5, and 5, Steph nearly had a triple-double with 27, 9, and 10. They combined for 12 threes and 60% of their team's points. The Warriors would go on to win their 3rd championship in 4 years, and Durant would win back-to-back Finals MVP. In 2001, we had Allen Iverson taking the Sixers to their first finals since 1983. His 44 points are good for the 7th most points in Game 7 history. He scored 40.7% of his team's points, which is good enough for 11th in our rankings. While they would go on to lose in the NBA Finals to the Lakers, Allen Iverson had an amazing MVP season, capped off by this Game 7 victory over the Bucks. Going back to 2018, we have LeBron in the Eastern Conference Finals versus the Celtics. On the road, he nearly puts up a triple-double. His stat line is good for the 8th best in our rankings. In true LeBron fashion, he put the entire team on his back and carried the Cavs to their 4th straight finals appearance. In the 2002 Western Conference Finals, we got another incredible Shaq and Kobe performance. With each of them going for 30 and 10, it definitely makes them one of the best duos in Game 7 history. On the road, with a finals appearance on the line, they managed to keep their three-peat dream alive. With a wild fourth quarter, it was Shaq at the end of the game that had a chance to win it. While he missed, in overtime he ended up having 6 points and a few clutch blocks. Maybe the most impressive stat is that he hit both of his free throws. Both Shaq and Kobe showed up big in the fourth quarter and overtime to help seal the victory. The Lakers would go on to win their 3rd championship in a row, Shaq his 3rd Finals MVP in a row, and cement their place in history as one of the greatest teams of all time. In the 2005 finals, we have another amazing duo with Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili against the Pistons. In such a low-scoring game, every bucket mattered, and Tim and Manu did not miss. The final 5 minutes of the game was all about those two. The Spurs would go on to win their second championship in 3 years and prolong their dynasty. 2 years after that, they'd win another championship. I just couldn't have a top 20 without these two in there because they put together such an amazing performance in Game 7 of the finals. In 2010, Kobe got revenge. In 2008, they lost in the finals to the Celtics. In 2010, he wasn't going to let it happen. Now, Kobe didn't have the best stat line in this game. He went 6 for 24 and had 4 turnovers. But this is where stats don't always tell the whole story. This is Kobe's only bucket in the fourth quarter. He went 8 for 9 from the free throw line, had 15 rebounds, and one of the best assists in Game 7 finals history. Yes, he had some help from his teammates, but this would be his 5th championship, 2nd finals MVP in a row, and the 16th Lakers championship in their history. Best of all, he got to beat the Celtics, the Lakers' rival, in Game 7 of the finals. On his way to his 2nd championship and finals MVP in a row, LeBron put on a clinic against the Spurs. With 37 points and 21 rebounds, he really did it all in this game. LeBron even hit 5 threes. The Spurs dared him to shoot, and he cashed it. Chris Bosh, Mike Miller, and Ray Allen combined for 0 points in this game. Not only that, he had to deal with a solid Spurs team, and Tim Duncan hitting shots like this. In the fourth quarter with the game on the line, LeBron hits a clutch jumper here, and then seals the victory with a steal from Manu Ginobili. With that, the Heat win their 2nd straight title, and the rematch is set for 2014. Now for the game I'm sure you've been waiting for, 2016 LeBron in the finals versus the Warriors. Now, I'm not the biggest LeBron fan, and you might not believe me because I've got several of his games on this list here, but this finals game was the peak of Game 7 performance. From the start, LeBron was aggressive. He was doing everything for his team, whether it was a steal like this, pass ahead to Kyrie, or one of the 3 blocks that he had in this game. The magnitude of this game just cannot be understated. The Warriors, with the 73-9 record, have the best record of all time. They already came back from being down 3-1 against the Thunder, and here they've blown their own 3-1 lead. If the Cavs don't win this game, do they blow up their team? Do the Warriors end up getting KD after all? What happens to the NBA landscape if LeBron doesn't put on this performance? LeBron goes on to win his 3rd championship, brings a championship to Cleveland, and sets us up for rematches in the 2017 and 2018 finals. Sure, he didn't score 51 points, but his triple-double on the road against the defending champion Warriors in a record-breaking year is definitely the best Game 7 performance of all time. So what do you think? How would you rank these games? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, thanks for watching.